Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Divorce Support Club December meeting. I'm here today with Lauren Preedy from Walker Family Law. Lauren, would you like to introduce yourself very quickly?
Yes, hello. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Lauren Preedy. I'm one of the team at Walker Family Law. Divorce and financial matters is mainly what we deal with, along with private children work as well. And you'll have to excuse my Christmas jumper today because I'm working from home and it's freezing. So I hope nobody minds.
Thank you very much, Lauren. That's brilliant. While we are talking today, please do feel free to use the Q&A button at the bottom if you've got any particular questions that you would like to ask. I'll just very quickly introduce myself as well. My name's Claire Macklin. I'm a breakup and divorce coach. I'm a qualified coach and I'm also twice divorced. I'm also a single parent to two teenage boys. I've had stepchildren. I've done all kinds of different Christmases, from very large to being by myself. My role really is to support my clients through the emotional ups and downs of breakup and divorce so that they can move through it with confidence and strength. I'm also the author of a book, which you can see behind me, Breakup from Crisis to Confidence, which you can find on my website or on Amazon. And very briefly, there are 7 things that I see as the kind of pillars to everything that we do at the DSC. We're trying to help you shift your focus and concentrate on you away from your ex, to find calm and clarity, also to work out what you can and can't control and focus on what you can control, because that's where your power lies, to see options and make really good informed choices, to communicate effectively, and ultimately to create a new life post-divorce that you're excited about and pleased to live. So today we're going to talk about the very sort of tricky, challenging period of time that's coming up soon, Christmas. The media, of course, presents the most romantic, idealized, pictures of happy families, lots of people laughing, playing board games, eating wonderful meals, smiling, have a lovely time together. In reality, we know it's very different to that. It can be really emotionally draining. Perhaps you're trying to please everybody. Maybe there are lots of arguments when everyone's had a bit too much to drink. Perhaps old resentments come to the fore. There might be rows about when you're going to visit various people and so on. And that's without divorce in the mix. So when you're divorcing or you're separated, or even post-divorce, those emotions can be really, really heightened. Perhaps you're also feeling grief around the loss that you've experienced. Perhaps you're feeling guilty. Perhaps you're wishing things were different, or you're stuck in the middle of a conflict about how to arrange things for your children. And those high emotions can really lead to very high stress over Christmas, and to conflict. And even the most peaceful of co-parenting relationships can be rocked. How we handle the Christmas holidays not only impacts on ourselves, it also impacts massively on our children and how they experience the holiday times. We can also see, I definitely see this. I see Christmas as a time of it when we can give an example to our children of how they can handle difficult things, how they can handle change. So if you can handle your feelings really well, if you can show your children that you accept that things can change, they will learn really valuable lessons because you're role modeling how to deal with that. So we
And I
thought what
think
we'd do. Oh, sorry, Lauren, go on.
Sorry, Claire. I was just
Right.
going to say as well that with, of course, if people have been accessing kind of professional services with yourselves or with Walker Family Law, or if you're seeing a therapist or any other professional, of course, that's all shut down over Christmas usually. So it's really important for us to plan ahead so that we can help ourselves and others to get through this difficult period.
Absolutely, Lauren. That's really well said, of course. So yeah, everything that you can do in advance to prepare yourself emotionally for Christmas is going to be really good. And what we thought we'd do today is look at 4 sort of different scenarios around Christmas that come up all the time. So the first one is, we're the children of divorced parents. What does it feel like to us? I've spoken to my own children on numerous occasions about this. And I think it's really important to put yourself in your children's shoes. And I really mean put yourself in them. So I do this exercise quite often with clients, because it's really easy when you feel emotional, when you feel angry or riled up, to get stuck in your own perspective and not be able to see beyond it. So what we do here is if you close your eyes and imagine that you are your children, you are seeing and hearing and experiencing things through their perspective, through their eyes and in their world. It can be quite challenging, but it's really worth doing. And then just ask yourself, how do they feel? What is it that they want? And what message would they give you? Most children just want to be able to see both their parents. They want to be able to have fun with both their parents, to be free to enjoy their time with both their parents. So when you put your children's interests right at the top, it really means stepping into their world and how they view things. No child wants to see their parents arguing over where they'll spend Christmas Day. In the long run, they'll probably remember that arguing for many more years than they'll remember which house they spent Christmas in. So I've gathered together some of the thoughts that my children have come up with and other children of various clients of mine. So the first thing that my children want is to know what's going to be different and what's going to stay the same. Because like us, they like certainty. They want us to talk to them about the arrangements. They don't want us to make them choose, but they do want an explanation of what's going to change and what isn't going to change. So before you can talk to your children about that, it's really worth asking yourself questions like these. What will still work? What won't work anymore and needs to change? And importantly, can we work together on this? So ideally, you'd be wanting to discuss these things with your ex-partner. So can you agree, for example, on what you want the children to feel over Christmas? So this means creating a vision of what you want the children to go away with, the memories you want them to go away with. So for me, I want my children to have really good memories of Christmas. I want them not to have to worry about pleasing me or pleasing their dad. I want them to remember the experiences that they had and to remember Christmas as a happy time and not a stressful one. And my ex and I, we're very lucky we agree on that. So if you can agree on your intentions and motivations, that's brilliant. Even if you can't, keep your intention for yourself and keep it right at the fore whenever you're communicating with your ex-partner. So some of the things that might change, for example, might be some of your traditions. So I was talking to a client recently who was really worried that on Christmas morning, their routine had always been for the children to get up and bring their stockings full of presents into their bedroom to open them all together. And since last Christmas, she and her husband have split up, and she doesn't really want that to be happening anymore. She's worried that it will trigger lots of memories for her. So we talked about what she could do differently. So she decided that the children are getting older now, and they would create a different tradition of taking their stockings downstairs, where they'd open them with a glass of Bucks Fizz and have pancakes for breakfast. And the children were really up for that, and so a new tradition could be born. The second thing that I hear a lot is we don't want to be fought over. We're not possessions. What we really want is time, connection, attention, love, and to create good memories on whatever day it is. Certainly, my children don't give two hoots if we celebrate Christmas on Christmas Day or if we celebrate it on the 27th or the 17th or the 29th. Later in life, my children are now in their late teens, and what they say is they remember how they felt rather than which house they were in. So be flexible if you can. If your ex asks you to change arrangements, for example, on pickups and drop-offs, think about how this would benefit the children. And if it does benefit the children, then be flexible around it. The next thing is please don't make us choose. So we love you both. We don't want to have to decide between you because that invariably will mean hurting one or other of your feelings. And that gives us a kind of internal conflict. So when children feel responsible for keeping one or other of their parents happy, they're learning to people please. They're learning to minimize their own feelings and put other people's feelings above theirs. And they also learn to filter what they share with you in an attempt to save your feelings. So perhaps ask yourself, is that really what I want? Lauren, please do chip in at any point as well. I know you've got lots
Yeah.
of experience on this.
Yeah, so the bit that I was kind of thinking where it would link to if there are already court proceedings in place, or if there's already been court proceedings, and there might be an order, is a few things to bear in mind. So if there is already a court order in place, that can be difficult for many reasons, particularly if the order was made when the children were a bit younger and then they're a bit older, and there can be kind of really difficult kind of communications between the parents, who one may think something should change and one may think it shouldn't. But ultimately, you're bound by a court order if there is one in place. And it's also worth checking the wording to make sure that what was agreed is being followed, because often there are different patterns at Christmas than term time or other kinds of holidays. So again, there can be some awkwardness surrounding those things. And if you can return to mediation, if you've been to mediation before, to specifically deal with that Christmas time, then that could be something that would be good to do. The other thing as well is that if negotiations are still ongoing, whether or not there's been a court process or not, it's to think carefully about what the children may want if they're old enough to make those decisions. And that links back in with the making children choose things. And the expression wishes and feelings will often come up within Children Act proceedings, and it's one of the criteria that the court considers on the what's something called the welfare checklist, which is in the legislation. And that can again be a really difficult thing, because it's linked to not a specific age of when children's wishes and feelings will be taken into account. It's linked mainly to maturity, and it can be sometimes difficult to divide up what the children may want to do, but also they may not be able to make certain decisions. So to not put the pressure on them to make decisions that they're not able to make. And that also, I think, links in with if there are court proceedings, or you're thinking that might happen, is that the children don't usually have a voice within the court. And this is something that is very, very carefully considered by resolution, of which I'm the chair of Somerset, and it's something that's always very prevalent in making sure that the children's welfare and priority of the children is the utmost attention for the court. But there is CAFCAS who are linked to the court, who are social workers and the court's advisors, and they do speak with the children if it's appropriate to do so. So sometimes there can be a fear with parents that they don't know how it's going to operate with the children having a say or not having a say. So I'm always more than happy to talk to people about the process, whether or not you're thinking of embarking on it if things sadly can't be sorted out without it. So I hope that's a helpful interjection there, Claire.
Really, really helpful. Thank you, Lauren. It's always good to get the legal backdrop to
Mm.
some of the more emotional stuff,
Yeah,
that I'm
yeah.
talking about.
And in my
Um,
experience as well, there's a few other kind of funny things, I say funny things that come up that are really important but may appear to be quite small at the time, and that's the things about presents. And
oh, I'm going to talk about that in a bit.
oh, okay, I will keep shmum for now then.
Yeah, chicken when I get to that point, but I'm going to get to that point, absolutely. One of the last thing I was going to say on this slide was it's around, I hear clients talking a lot about the time they have being fair, or the time they have being equal. Um, and one thing that I would say is, what often feels, you can get kind of caught up in being fair and equal, and it doesn't always feel so great to the children, and can result in them feeling kind of torn down the middle, like they're almost like they're a commodity that each parent needs to have 50% of, or 60/40 of, or whatever the division might be. And I think there's a danger, and when you focus on fair and equal in terms of time, children really pick up on that, and they learn that they have to divide their time equally. And that can carry on even to when they're adults, and can be quite a massive burden for the children to carry. So I think that's really worth thinking about. Especially when you come to times when, for example, the fair or equal division might mean taking the children away from a family party early, something like that. So I think it's really worth asking yourself, does this fair and equal thing enable the children to fully experience a day or an event that's really important to them and their extended family? So the thing that I've heard from my children is, please don't take us away from an important family party just because it's your time according to a spreadsheet. And I think that's a really important thing to bear in mind.
Yeah, I see it happen a lot where it's almost some people feel the need for various reasons, and that's what we're also both Walker Family Law and Nuclear to help with, is to get to stop being fixated on it being exactly half an hour each or exactly a percentage of time, because children won't notice a few hours here and there. And I totally appreciate that it's important, and in my own personal experiences as well, that you want to maximize the time. But that's where you have to shift that focus, as you say, from what you would like to what the children would like.
Absolutely. And then just a few more other things. The other message I hear really loud and clear is, please encourage us to enjoy our time at our other parents. Um, Take the high road, even if the other parent concerned doesn't do the same in return. It can be really helpful sometimes, even to help your children, if they're quite young, particularly, to perhaps choose a small gift that they can take to their other parents and potentially any other important people that there are there. So my children, for example, have a stepmom and a younger brother at their dad's house. Um, and so I've, in the past, when they were little, don't used to do it anymore, have helped them buy just a small gift, a box of chocolates for the family, or take a card. So if you can do things like that, that will go a long way. Another thing that I've heard again from my own children is that, we're worried about leaving you on your own. So how you frame the time when the children aren't with you to your children will have a massive impact. So, and if you're not managing your feelings of loss and sadness, or whatever it is, the children may worry about you when they're not with you, and they might start then to say that they want to be with you. So this is a really good opportunity to show children how to effectively manage their emotions. So I say things like, I know you're all worried that I might be sad, but my feelings are mine to worry about and sort out. It's not your job to make sure that I'm okay. I've got plans to see X and Y and do A and B. So I'll be busy doing those things while you're away. And we can speak on the phone. I'm going to be just fine. Your job is to look after you. Um, all the time as parents, we're modeling for our children. So when you show your children that although you might feel a bit sad, although things might be challenging, you can manage, you can cope, and you can respond with dignity and confidence, they will model that. They'll see what you're doing. And it's also really important, I think, to walk your talk. So we often tell our children, don't we, to be polite, to be respectful, to be kind. So it can be really confusing to them when we aren't those things to their other parent. I think that's really worth perhaps thinking about. The other thing that I've heard again from my own kids is, we need some downtime in this, because we often don't think about this as the one parent in the picture. It can be really exhausting moving between two homes at the best of times. And over Christmas, it can be even worse. So they go between houses, and at each house, everyone there is really excited to see them. They've got lots of plans, lots of visitors, lots of activities. It can be really exhausting. And one year, I remember my youngest son coming home, and he said, "Mum, we had Grandma and Granddad here for Christmas, the weekend before Christmas. Then we went to Dad's for Christmas. Then we went to visit our other granddad, and we saw our cousins. And then we went back. And then we went to visit our cousins on your side of the family. And then you got us all tickets to watch a big rugby match. And it's still only Boxing Day. And we haven't had a day at home without any visitors or an outing for 10 days. And we're really knackered. So please, can we stay in today?" And I think that's really worth bearing in mind. The children can become just exhausted over Christmas. I know what it's like from my own perspective over Christmas, dashing about. And the children sometimes are doing double because they're doing it at each home. So worth really factoring in some downtime. And then the presence issue that Lauren mentioned earlier. So I see all the time parents competing over who can buy the biggest, the most expensive gift. So be really aware of where you're putting your energy in your present buying, and ask yourself some really good but maybe difficult questions about your motivations. So what's my why behind buying this gift? Am I trying to win a competition to give the coolest or most expensive or biggest gift? Am I trying to outgift the other parent? Am I trying to compensate because I feel guilty at leaving? Am I trying to outdo my other parent who I know has less money than me? It's really worth being really honest with yourself and just checking in with your own motivations. And if you're on the receiving end of this, remember you can't control the other parent. So when they tell you about, or show you know, the children tell you about, or show you the latest gadget or expensive gift, really try hard to hide your reaction, keeping it internal, not ruining or raining on their parade. It can be really tempting, I know, to make, a really sarcastic remark, but instead focus on you, you do you, and resist that urge to join in. So perhaps when you're buying your gifts, some really good questions might be, what example do I want to give the children? What are the values that I want to embody? And what do I believe is best for the children? Um, in the long run, children aren't daft and they will see through it when one parent is obviously trying to buy them through expensive gifts. And they'll also be able to see how they can potentially manipulate this too. And the other, just very briefly, thing I'd say about gifts is buying gifts that come with conditions. And I see this too. So I've bought you this gift, but you can't take it to your dad's house. Or I've bought you this, but you're not allowed to take it to your mum's. My personal belief is that once I've given a gift to my children, it belongs to them and they can choose where they take it. I might remind them to bring it home because they'll miss it, but they can choose to take it. I think putting conditions on gifts adds just another layer of stress, and perhaps reduces the pleasure of that gift for the child. And I know, Lauren, you had some things as well to say on this.
Yeah, no, my slant was one thought that I had is slightly different in respect of I see it happen a lot where parents are communicating with me about the issue of buying presents and the other person won't talk to them about it.
Mm.
So they're trying to either not duplicate buying something if it is something that they've perhaps previously talked about the children having, and an issue that often comes up that causes quite a lot of conflict is the age that is appropriate for a child to have a mobile phone.
Yeah.
And it can be really difficult if there's no communication between the parents about these things. So I can really appreciate the difficulties people do go through, and it's to try to communicate about it. And that's where something like our family wizard, which we've talked about before, can be a really good way of kind of keeping communications about something very specific within the context. So for those people that don't know, our family wizard is an app that is a self-contained app, and you can send messages and there's a calendar in there, and you can communicate outside of your other social media and emails and text messages. So you don't have to look at it when you don't want to. It's not for the topic today, but we've previously with Claire talked about boundaries and not having to reply to messages late at night. But for this type of communication over Christmas, the feedback from parents is that it works very well. So that's something to bear in mind. And then the other, just to touch on what you just mentioned about buying presents for the other person. Yes, I have clients talk to me about this a lot, where they've actually been very thoughtful about helping the children buy a gift, and then for want of a better expression, something really rubbish turns up for them. And the children, as they get older, really do make comments about it because they don't think of it as being fair. And as you said, as the children get older, they're not daft. They understand these things, and they understand it's not about the actual value of it. It's about the thought. So that's I do think something that needs careful consideration. And then linking to the legal side of things, about money and how absolutely difficult it is on a separation anyway, but the pressures that people are facing when it comes to times like Christmas, especially when we've been going through a cost of living crisis and things like that, it's to really make sure you reach out to your professional advisors, talk to us about it at Walker Family Law, talk to Claire about it, because the last thing you want is additional stress of money, and we can help work through it with you. And of course, a lot of people, in conjunction with having issues to do with where children are going to spend time, are possibly in the middle of dealing with financial resolution as well. So those issues kind of can come hand in hand. So I'm always happy to talk about that with people as well.
Yeah, thank you very much, Lauren. That's brilliant. I just thought I'd touch very briefly as well on what, what if your fellow parent is a counter parent kind of parent? So anything that you do, they do the opposite. They undermine, and so on. So that I'm going to say the thing that I always say around this is resist the urge to analyze, understand, try and change them, because that will suck your energy away. What you really need to do is accept them as they are. Um, if they're always high conflict, they're probably not going to be suddenly nice and gentle and thoughtful over Christmas. Um, Entering into that conflict by trying to get them to see why they should be different is often very counterproductive. So instead, focus on what you can control, which is your responses, your thoughts, keeping your communication consistent, brief, informative. Don't reply for 24 hours to something that riles you, sleep on things. Perhaps get a friend to check your responses. Um, don't respond to very personal attacks and keep emotion out of your responses. And be willing to be flexible when it's in the best interest of the children. So there's flexible and then there's bending so far that you kind of almost give in every time, and that's not what I'm suggesting. So a good question to ask is, how will being flexible here help the children? And if the answer is it will help the children because it will reduce their stress or it will make things easier for them, then be flexible. If it won't, if it perhaps will cause them more stress or more concern or more worry, then maybe that's the time to stand firm. So the other thing I was going to say was that, if you find yourself being drawn into conflict and arguing over what should be, ask yourself some other questions. So what's it costing you to stay focused on how you think it should be? And what's it costing the children when you stay focused on what you think it should be or should look like? And what could you do differently? How could you see this as an opportunity to do something different? How could you be the best parent that you can be on your time? And then the next little scenario that we wanted to talk about was my children are with their other parent for Christmas, and I'm not quite sure how I'm going to cope. And I talk to clients about this a lot at this time of year. Many of my clients are really dreading the time that their children are going to be away. And if it's the first time you've had to do this, it can be really, really hard. I remember the first year my children were away with their dad over Christmas. I felt really anxious about what I was going to do, where I was going to go, who I was going to spend the time with. Since then, I've done 7 Christmases with them and 7 without, I think, and I've worked out a number of ways to handle it. The first thing I'd say is, and I always say this, acknowledge how you feel. It's okay to feel sad. It's okay to feel whatever it is that you feel, because your emotions are like messengers knocking on the door. They're trying to tell you something. And if you squash them down, they will just come back louder and louder and louder. So I always say to my clients, acknowledge how you feel, name the feeling, validate it. It's okay to feel that. When you name your feelings, it often takes some of their power away. And I think it's also really worth noticing that feelings never stay, they're transitory, they shift, they change. Perhaps you can journal about it. And then reframe. So you can reframe the time when the children are away by asking questions like these. So, what won't I miss? So, for example, perhaps you no longer have to put up with going to visit your in-laws with the whole family, and it's always very stressful, and your father-in-law drinks too much, and it all gets very argumentative, and you're not going to miss that. So, focus on what you're not going to miss and what you're going to gain instead. Think about as well what you could do that you couldn't do otherwise, perhaps if the children were with you. So I always tell the story about the client that I had a couple of years ago who she was very distressed that her son was going to be spending time with his father over Christmas. And she wasn't quite sure how she was going to cope. So I asked her, well, what could you do that you couldn't do if he was with you? And the answer came actually really quickly. She said, well, on Boxing Day, there's a hunt, like a not a hunt, a kind of galloping down the seafront with the horses through the waves and so on. And I'd really like to do that. I've never been able to do it. So I said, well, why don't you book yourself on? So she did. She booked herself on that, and she also decided she was going to accept an invitation that her friend had given her to go over to theirs for Christmas Day. She knew that they'd be good fun, so she did that. She emailed me after Christmas actually to let me know that she had really enjoyed her time. She had also organised Christmas with her own family for, I think it was probably about the 28th. So they'd all come down, and her son had had two Christmases, and he thought that was absolutely fantastic. And he said it was the best Christmas he'd ever had. So you can turn it around by thinking about it differently. And remember, you always have choices. So if you're dreading this time, ask yourself first of all what it is that's the worst thing about it. Is it waking up by yourself, or is it spending the day on your own? Be really honest with what it is that you're worrying about. And then once you know what that is, you can start to think about the choices you've got to deal with it. Because when you've got only one option, you're stuck. Two options, and you've got a dilemma. Three options, and you have a choice. So you might, for example, if you're going to be by yourself on Christmas Day, your choices might be I'm going to stay in bed drinking crisps and chocolate, or I'm going to cook my favorite meal. I'm going to stay in my pajamas all day. I'm going to read and I'm going to watch movies. You might decide that you want to volunteer at a local homeless shelter. You might invite another single friend over for the day, or even a group of them. So a friend of mine has every other year she has a what she calls her waifs and strays Christmas. So everybody that's on their own gets an invite to go to her house, and they all bring something to contribute to lunch. Or you might, like my client, accept an invitation to a friend's. And you might also choose to celebrate Christmas completely on a different day with your children. So there are always choices to think about. And the children really will follow your lead. So they'll take their cue from you. So if you're down and negative, they will be down and negative as well. If you're angry and resentful and you voice that to them, they're likely to feel conflicted and stressed. So focus on the time that you do have rather than the time that you don't. Perhaps talk to your children as well about arrangements. Ask them for ideas of things they'd like to do. Make a list, put it on the fridge of things that you'd like to do and enjoy together, and then start making plans to do those things. And one thing that 100% I know is that the children will remember how they felt long after they remember which house they were at on Christmas Day in any given year. I don't know if there's anything that you want to add to that, Lauren, from your experiences, perhaps.
No, I think no, I think you've covered it really well there, Claire. But it's as if we could put it into the context of beyond just the children and parents as well.
Yeah,
It's like negativity breeds negativity. So that's where we've talked before about obviously the wider family as well and the comments that they make. And of course, if grandparents are also saying things like, well, I'm not going to see the children, then of course that's also detrimental as well. So it's kind of making sure that other people, if they're going to have an impact on the children as well, understand that there's going to be differences. And I think that it's embracing the changes, and I think that I really like those positive things that we've talked about before as to the things that you can do that you might not otherwise have been able to. And
yeah,
um
yeah. I think
nobody
that's really
and
important. And even if if this is if you're a single person without children, you can ask these same questions.
mm,
I remember, I think it was 2013, I went to Morocco for Christmas. And it was amazing. There was no Christmas over there. So when I got home, the children and I had Christmas on, I think, 30th of December or whatever it was. But just do something totally different, totally outside of your norm
yeah,
and
yeah.
perhaps even outside of your comfort zone.
And actually, that is a really good point because we have focused this talk on obviously the effect that mainly it will have on children at Christmas time. But that's not to negate people that don't have children, of course, because as in it's difficult in those circumstances as well. And you've still got to navigate those difficulties with other family members and the expectations of that. And those emotions of perhaps really missing somebody in your ex's family that you did have a friendship with, and that dynamics change. So yeah, all of these things are natural to feel, and that's where, if you need to reach out for support from us or from other professionals, it's really important to allow yourself to do that as well.
Yes, yeah, reach out to your support network.
Mm.
We've talked before about radiator friends, haven't we? Reach
Yes.
out to, if you're really worried that you're going to be on your own at Christmas, and you're feeling really down about that, reach out to your support network. Find out, if there's anybody else that you could meet up with, that you could go to, that whatever it is, reach out and ask for that help. Don't suffer in silence.
Mm.
The next little scenario that we're going to talk about is around adult children, because this is something that I hear it quite a lot in sessions, but there's not a lot about this if you Google, you won't find a lot about this. So I'm the adult child of divorced parents who just don't get on. And how do I juggle seeing everybody? So this is more about the expectations that might be put on you once you've grown up and you've perhaps left home, but your parents can't be together. And perhaps you've married somebody whose parents are also divorced. How do you manage seeing everybody? You might have four different sets of parents if both you and your partner have divorced parents. Not that, and that's not even counting siblings, grandparents, extended family as well. So there might be multiple homes to try and coordinate over one sort of 10-day to 2-week period. And there might also be all kinds of assumptions that are being made by the people around you. So if you've spent, for example, your childhood alternating Christmas between your mum and dad, there might be an assumption that this continues. And actually, this came up with my own son the other day. He was saying, "Oh, I think it's only fair if we go to dad's this year and yours next year." And I said, "Well, you're 17 now. At some point in the future, you will probably have different family that you want to spend some time with. So, you know, let's not assume that everything's always going to stay the same." It's really good to hear, "Oh, we'd really love to see you this Christmas," but the reality might be that a Christmas filled with long hours on the road, sleeping on sofas, uncomfortable sofa beds, futons, dashing about trying to keep everybody else happy, is really not what you want. So, a few bits of advice here. First of all, and you raised this just now, Lauren, work out your own boundaries first. So you can do anything, but you can't do everything. So ask yourself some of these questions. What parts of Christmas really matter to me? What am I prepared to compromise on, and what am I not? How much time am I prepared to travel around over Christmas? How much hosting am I prepared to do? How much time do I actually want to spend with certain people? We've all got some family members who perhaps we find a bit tricky. How much downtime do I want to factor in? And how much downtime might my children need? How could I do it differently? So I remember one year we couldn't all get together for Christmas, me and my family. So we actually had a bonkers, crazy Christmas in the middle of June, which was a bit weird, but that was what worked for us, and it was really quite entertaining. So work out your own boundaries and then communicate them clearly and respectfully. So be prepared to have a difficult conversation. The first time will be the hardest, and you might be met with resistance, you might be met with disappointment, but it will be worth it in the long run. So remember as well, you can't keep everybody happy, and in doing so, you might actually make yourself unhappy. So pace yourself over the Christmas period, is what I'd say. Lauren, anything that you'd like to add?
Yes, and well, it might be as well that it's a new relationship breakdown of your own parents, i.e., that you might be in your 20s, 30s, or 40s. We are dealing with a lot more divorces of older people. Obviously, life expectancy's got older, and actually, people are more able to make choices for that suit themselves now. And I see it a lot, but also in my own my own personal circle of friends. A few people have gone through situations where their parents, totally unexpectedly to them, have got divorced, and it's been a total emotional breakdown for them of having to deal with that, and kind of thinking, well, I ought to be dealing with this better. But there's no right or wrong. There isn't being better. There's not. You don't have to cope with it. You have to you don't. I always say to people that everybody goes through a grief of that type of thing in a different way. I'm not a qualified therapist, of course, I'm a solicitor, but I see it a lot, and a lot of different emotions, and everybody deals with it differently. And it's that not putting your pressure on yourself to feel like you ought to be doing something.
Yeah, there's a self-compassion element
Mm,
to this, isn't there? Of, acknowledging what it is that you're feeling, allowing yourself to feel it, and not beating yourself up for feeling it too.
mm.
And that
Yeah,
it's okay.
and that's something we've talked about before, Claire, isn't
Mm.
it? About like guilt, as
Yeah.
in, as in, should you feel guilty, or are you imposing guilt on yourself for something?
Mm. It's that
And
it's helpful versus unhelpful guilt, isn't it? We've talked about this a few
yes,
times.
yes, yeah, and
Is this feeling guilty helping me to perhaps change and do something differently? And that might be helpful.
yeah,
Or is it
and
unhelpful where all it's doing really is making me feel bad about myself?
and something popped up on my social media this morning, which I'll read to you now. It says, you're not obligated to have a relationship with another adult if it's not healthy for you. And again, it's that whole, you might have always been obliged or feel obliged to do something, but when changes happen in your own relationships or in other family members' relationships, that can actually be a really positive catalyst for change that's better for you.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, totally agree. Um, the last little section that we were going to talk about today was around new partners. So I've got a new partner and I want to integrate them into my Christmas plans. And how do I do that? Now, this can be fraught with all kinds of emotions, can't it? It can be really, really tricky, and I know lots of people really worry about it. And if you Google how to introduce a new partner, you get all kinds of results, particularly when you're Googling how to introduce them to my children. They range from never introduce a new partner until it's been at least a year, or your children have left home, or you're
I think
certain you're
that
going to marry this person.
I was going to say, I think that this can be can be kind of related to Googling an ailment that you have,
Yes,
and reading the most horrendous list of things that you could possibly
exactly.
read.
Exactly. And down to the other end of the spectrum might be, introduce them really quickly so you can see how they interact with your children before you become so deeply attached that it will be traumatic to extricate yourself. There is no right or wrong answer on this. And general pointers, I would say, number one, definitely have a plan. Don't spring a new person on your children or your family at the last minute without any warning. Christmas Day is probably not the best time to introduce somebody completely new. It's not the day for your children and your new partner probably to meet for the first time ever, because it's a significant step in a relationship. So do it carefully. So again, I think it's about checking in with your motivations. What are your reasons for wanting to integrate your partner at Christmas? How serious is the relationship? Have your children met this person and do they get on well? Um, is it likely to cause a huge argument with your ex-partner? Now, I'm not saying here don't do it for that reason, but it might be that it might be better to have that discussion at a different time other than Christmas when emotions are already high. And what's your gut telling you? What does your integrity tell you? There isn't, we can't give you a right or a wrong answer on this.
Mm.
Um, but
Yeah,
I
and I
would say,
think,
separate your sort of desire to spend all your time with this person from actually what your gut is telling you is a good thing for your family.
and you did touch on it on this earlier, but I do think it is an important thing to say again, is that people do tend to drink a bit more over the Christmas
Mm,
period. And even though you might not be drinking, if you raise something with somebody that has had a few extra alcoholic drinks than they might ordinarily have, again, that's not going to be a great way to spark a reaction. So it's just to be sensitive of the timings, isn't it, Claire? I think.
yes. I think that's the really important word here. It's about being sensitive to everybody. It's about being sensitive to your children and what they might want. If they're teenagers, you could probably talk to them about this, and have a reasoned discussion with them. It's about being sensitive to your ex-partner. It's about being sensitive perhaps to the wider family as well. And just being sensitive to the general situation and how this is a particularly heightened period of time, you know, so make a measured decision, I think is what I'm saying, rather than
Mm,
an emotional one, you know. And if you can't integrate your new partner this year, then make a plan perhaps to celebrate with them at a different time, you know, swap
yeah.
gifts when you are together and you're having a lovely time, you know, by yourselves and so on.
And this
um
can, of course, also be difficult, going back to the circumstance of it there not being any children involved as well.
mm,
If you um if somebody in your family may have been particularly fond of your ex,
yes.
and they're struggling to adjust, um,
Mm,
which may or may not be fair on you, but again, you can't change what that person's doing or saying, but that reaction could end up causing huge rows over the Christmas period.
yes, absolutely, yeah. And you know, something that's happened in my own family is that I've always gotten very well with my ex-husband's, my first ex-husband's family, and have been invited to various things by them still, and that doesn't always go down well with my ex and his wife. So you know, I need to be a little bit sensitive to that as well. Without there's a balance to be struck, isn't there? Because
Mm,
actually, those relationships are important to me and to the children. But it's also important to remember that my ex and his wife also have feelings around it. So it can be really tricky,
mm,
and very sensitive, like you say. But yeah, be measured. Don't let your emotions rule um, over your, you know, your gut instinct of what might be right or wrong.
and to try to be kind,
Yes,
in very
yeah,
simple terms.
I think that's probably a really good point to wrap this all up. You know, compassion and kindness. Be kind to yourself.
Mm,
Be compassionate to yourself. You know, and also I was going to say, you know, if you're spending time with your ex-partner over Christmas, perhaps you're even still living together, or perhaps you're spending Christmas Day together for the sake of the children, or you've got to spend an evening together at a big family party, whatever it is. Try and be kind and compassionate to each other over this period of time. It will pay dividends, massive dividends. And I think that brings us to the end of this session. We are meeting again, I believe, on January the 18th, when I think it's Fiona and I will be talking about life after divorce and what it can look like, and some ideas for how you can start to think about what life looks like post-divorce. So all that probably remains, I'll just shut this down. All that remains really is for both Lauren and I to wish everybody watching a really peaceful Christmas. And we will see you again in 2024.
yes, thank you for joining us, and yes, wishing you all a wonderful Christmas. Just to let you all know, our offices are shut from the Friday just before Christmas, reopening after the bank holiday, New Year's Day. Um, Emails are periodically being checked, but please do, as we said, prepare. And if there's anything that you want to ask us beforehand, then please do get in touch.
Absolutely, yes. Think ahead, get in touch before everything shuts. So thank you ever so much, everybody, and see you next year.